Welcome to Fantasy Legends, my name's Scott, and today we're going to look at one of Final Fantasy X's characters, none other than Tidus's father, Jecht. Before we get into it, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're over 160 subs now. Now let's get on with the video. Not only was Jecht Tidus's father, he was one of the High Summoner Braska's legendary guardians and a major blitzball player for the Zanakan Abes. For Jecht, blitzball was much more than a game. We saw this with him having a tattoo on his chest of the Zanakan Abes. When we see Jecht, he comes across as surly and arrogant. In some cases, this is warranted, as he is a brilliant blitzball player as well as a fighter. However, he does exaggerate this somewhat. He refers to himself as the Great Jecht, and in Spira, he is also known as Sir Jecht, which adds to the feeling of arrogance with him. Jecht thinks of himself as the best blitzball player there has ever been. However, this is not the actual case, as his career did hit a slump when he began drinking. It was also said that he was going to retire from blitzball altogether. However, he was very quick to deny this and claimed that he could quit drinking whenever he chose to. One of the things that Jecht loved about being a blitzball player was the fame that it gave him. He often asked Braska if there was going to be celebratory events during their pilgrimage. Even though Jecht does claim that he could quit drinking at any time, we see that he is sort of out of control when it comes to Tidus, as he often calls him a crybaby and berates him, a sort of emotional abuse of kinds that probably comes from the drinking. Jecht and Tidus's relationship is toxic. He sort of encourages Tidus to try harder and disprove his criticisms. However, this just makes Tidus feel like he's not loved or cared about. I think that mainly Jecht has a lot of problems due to his vices, rather than actually not caring about people. Jecht is a good man at heart, and we see this with the fact that when we saw the team go up against the Chocobo Eater, Tidus says it is the right thing to do to help the people. Oren laughs and reminisces that Jecht used to say the same thing, which ended up causing the group no end of trouble. We learn quite a lot about Jecht from Jecht's real story from Final Fantasy X's Ultimania Omega, which elaborates on his personality quite a bit. In this, he is criticised for hating practice. However, he does make lots of trips out to sea to do practice sessions. This is probably to conceal the fact that he trains so much, as his arrogance likes him to believe that he is so naturally talented he doesn't need to train. We also learn that in the memory of Jecht, Tidus remained that 7-year-old boy that he knew and cherished the image of his son that needed protection and help when growing up. When Jecht arrived on Spira, everything was very disorientating for him. Obviously, he didn't know what was going on. The world was completely different. His Anakin was in ruins. The world actually thought him as crazy, and due to this, they locked him up for being drunk in Bevelle. Luckily, he didn't stay in prison for long, as a former priest of Yevon named Braska visited Jecht and requested he become his guardian, along with Oren, a warrior monk from Bevelle. Oren didn't actually like the idea of Jecht joining them and objected, but Braska thought it was the perfect irony for the three of the most unlikely people to defeat Sin: a drunken blitzball player from Zanakan, a summoner who is also a heathen with an Albed wife, and a half-breed daughter, Yuna, and a disgraced warrior monk who had refused to marry the daughter of a high priest. At the beginning of their journey, Jecht's arrogance and recklessness caused him a lot of trouble, most notably at the Moonflow, where he mistook a shoe puff for a fiend and wounded it, forcing Braska to pay for the damages with their travel money. After this incident, Jecht actually gave up drinking anything stronger than shoe puff milk for fear his family would be ashamed of him, and out of embarrassment for what he forced Braska to do, Jecht recorded their journey to show his wife and Tidus, and still hoped that he would see them someday, so recording the messages they would be able to see what had transpired at his time at Spira. We get to see a few of these sphere messages throughout the game. Over the course of Braska's pilgrimage, Jecht did mature quite a bit, changing his personality, becoming more mellow and more of the typical hero type rather than the drunk that he was at the beginning. By the time that they had reached Zanakan ruins, the three of them had become really close friends, and Jecht actually offered himself to become Braska's final aeon. He did this knowing that he could never return home. As one last favour, Jecht actually asked Aeon to look after Tidus, believing Aeon could find a way to the dreams Anakin's. Though Aeon protested Jecht's choice, knowing Sin would return, Jecht assured him that this was the only way to stop Sin. Jecht and Braska did manage to defeat Sin, however this did not stop Sin from returning to the world. Jecht actually became part of the new Sin as the final aeon. However, he could control some of the emotions of Sin and control how Sin acted in some capacities. However, we won't touch too much on Sin for this video, as this is mainly concentrating on Jecht. We do get to see Jecht one last time in the game, which is actually in Sin itself. As he is able to speak to his son one final time, Jecht asks Tidus to finish him, as Yu Yevon has almost consumed him, and he feels that he will be unable to hear the hymn any longer. Jecht transforms into Braska's final aeon, and Tidus and his allies defeat him. As Jecht is dying, Tidus and him make peace with each other, and Jecht enters the far plane. Yuna uses the aeons to weaken Yu Yevon's spirit, making him vulnerable for the first time in 1,000 years. After the group destroy Yu Yevon, and the spiral of death ends, Dreams Anakin also comes to an end, and its inhabitants fade away, including Tidus himself. In the far plane, Jecht and Tidus reunite as father and son, slapping each other jovially with a high five. So there you have it, the story of Jecht. What did you guys think of him? He was probably one of the most important non-playable characters in the game. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of him. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for listening.